Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith. Today I am talking about Monster She Wrote, the women who pioneered horror and speculative fiction. And this is by Lisa Kröger and Melanie R. Anderson. It is from Quirk Books. There's their little logo there. There it is on the side. Nice hardback, beautiful production, and I'm just going to tell you right off, this book is fantastic. It is what it says. The women who pioneered horror and speculative fiction. It covers tons of female authors and sort of chronological order. Here's our big fat table of contents. All sorts of great stuff. It sort of goes by subject. But again, those subjects are kind of in chronological order. Part one is the founding mothers. So you have people like Margaret Cavendish, or Mad Madge, Anne Radcliffe, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, of course, Regina Maria Roche, however you say it, Mary Ann Radcliffe, Charlotte Dacker, I never know how to say that. But then we get into Haunting Tales, Cult of the Occult, the women who wrote the pulps. Lots of women writing for Weird Tales and different pulp magazines. Haunting the Home, paperback horror. That's when we're getting into the 70s and 80s. The Boom, the New Goths, and then the future of horror and speculative fiction, which doesn't so much focus on particular women, but sort of throws names and things out there. But basically what this book does, first chapter, part one, Margaret Cavendish. So we get a little tease about who Margaret is and what she did for the genre, and then we get when it's available, because there's a couple times when they say not a lot is known about this person, but we get a little mini biography, where they came from, them growing up, their life, and then it gets into what they wrote. And generally, one or two things, their most famous things, but then it might throw a few others in there that aren't so well known. And then the best part, I'm going to have to go to the back here so I get it right. So they have a reading list at the back of each, at the end of each person's chapter. So you have Not to Be Missed, which is like the essential. Which person am I looking at here? Anne Radcliffe, it looks like. Yes. So, Not to Be Missed, the essential Anne Radcliffe. If you're going to read anything by Anne Radcliffe, read this. Then we have Also Try, which is like, all right, here's some more, slightly more obscure stuff by this author, but you might want to give it a go. And it'll tell you whether they're easier to find, oh, there's a new edition from this publisher this year that came out, or it's in the public domain. If it's short stories, it's in this collection. And then related work. And so this is, okay, so if you like Anne Radcliffe, maybe try out this book by this author, or watch this movie that was an adaptation of Anne Radcliffe's work, or even here's a biography that was written about Anne Radcliffe. So they have that at the end of each of these chapters about each of these women, and I was jumping on Amazon, looking these things up, adding them to my wish list. I've already ordered some of this stuff that was recommended in these reading lists because this was it was fascinating. The history of these women, their lives, what they wrote. I just really, really enjoyed this. And it's a nice fat book, nice and heavy, solid, over 300 pages. And and I like there's notes in the back. See, it says notes. I like the way they did it. Now, generally, I like footnotes because definitely over end notes, because with a footnote you're reading along, you see the little asterisk or the little number, and you can just jump down to the bottom of the page and see what it is what extra information they want to give you. End notes bother me because either you see that little asterisk or number and you have to flip to the back of the book to read what it says and then go back to the page you're on and continue reading, or you just ignore it, and then when you get to the end, you can read the notes if you want to. And by that point, usually for me, I've forgotten what that note was referring to. So even though I'm like, okay, I'm at the back of the book, and here's note number 1, what am I reading? Well, I don't remember what was in the first chapter, specifically what this note referenced. So I like footnotes better than endnotes, but in here, there are no asterisks or numbers or anything. So I didn't even know there were going to be notes at the end. But what they do is, for each note, they give you the significant part of the sentence or whatever from the book itself. So immediately, for example, and I assume that's the page number that it's on. But for example, the very first one says in italics, known among the upper class circles as Mad Madge. So that's in italics. Then we get the note on what that means. But by giving me that line from the earlier text, I immediately know what they're talking about. So that really worked well. I love the way they did that. I'd like to see more people do that. So we have the notes in the back. Then there's a suggested reading section with some general reading and then specific authors and topics. And then we have an index of works. And then an index, where is it? A subject index, which is nice. And then acknowledgments and everything. But really, just a great source if you're interested in the history of horror and speculative fiction in general, but of course specifically women writing it. And of course you've got Shirley Jackson. Here, I'll just name a few more of the other people here. V.C. Andrews, Kathy Koja, Lisa Tuttle. This is in the paperback horror part. Anne Rice, Sarah Waters, Susan Hill. Let's jump back. Marjorie Bowen, Alice Askew, Catherine Lucille Moore, Gertrude Barrows Bennett. I'm just throwing names out there. Charlotte Riddle. I'm jumping around. Time jumps. And it's got these great little illustrations, and each section sort of has its own. So the founding mothers, we've got this page that shows us these little illustrations, and then they're found throughout each chapter, each character. Sort of one of those illustrations fits into what they wrote. And then we always have, everybody's got a quote from one of their works to give you just a real quick little feel of, how they write. See, there's another for the Cult of the Occult. There's another page of those little illustrations. So, just a fantastic book. I flew through it, which isn't always the case with nonfiction, because, you don't have a compelling plot that's driving you forward. But this, really, I loved it. I wanted the information. I wanted to absorb it. I wanted the recommendations. Really, really interesting. One of the best nonfiction books I've read in quite some time, although I don't read as much nonfiction now as I used to. I should change that, but highly recommended. Monster, She Wrote. If you can find a copy, and I think they're readily available. If this is a subject that interests you as it does me, absolutely pick this up. Really, really interesting. Really, really great stuff. One of the best books I've read so far this year. So that's Monster She Wrote by Lisa Kröger and Melanie R. Anderson. And again, beautiful, beautiful, nice, heavy book. All right, that's it. And do I have a question for this video? Is this the kind of thing that interests you? The history of a genre, the pioneers of that genre, just reading little biographies of the writers. You know, they're more in depth than a writer's bio at the end of a book, but it's not like you're reading a full biography, of course, of that person. Just there's the really interesting tidbits. Is this something that interests you? As always, I love behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, this obvious again. I loved this book, so it's absolutely a subject that I'm interested in. What do you think? Is this the kind of thing that interests you? Do you even read author bios in your books? I do, because I want to know. I want to know stuff about the people I'm reading. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe. All that good YouTube stuff. If you care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is ErikSmith5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. That's all I've got for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Erik Smith, and until next time, read more books.